And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Ready for February. We're going to give you a forecast of what we have coming from NCPA Media at NorthcentralPa.com. Tom Brady has actually retired. I know there was some debate over the last 48 hours, but it's actually happening. We're going to talk about that. A really interesting story about Elon Musk and a student that he tried to bribe. We're going to get into what we would do if we were that student. And last but not least, the teacher's dilemma. Some statistics coming out from the Bureau of Labor, and I think the numbers are staggering. We've talked about education. We're going to do a little bit of kind of like a statistics take on this and what does it mean, because I was floored by some of these numbers. Before we get to all of that, Mark.
I don't know if you want to ask today.
Mark, how are you feeling today?
It has been a crazy.
You had my favorite thing.
16 hours?
Real quick. My favorite thing about you is you didn't move. There's my dog. You didn't move for a solid 10 minutes before the show. The moment the show starts, we got to get an iced tea out of the fridge. We got to get an Altoid. It's like the statue becomes the mover as soon as we start the show.
Right. Literally since last night, if you're not a basketball follower, if you're not a Facebook follower, we had a very interesting game at Hughesville last night, and I've literally been texting nonstop. I'm tired. I didn't get to bed till 4 o'clock. I got up at 7, then I don't know. So I have a few hours sleep mixed in there. I don't know. I know you've been coaching a lot longer than I have.
I don't know about that.
It's in high school sports. Okay. I mean, I've been on and off and different, but
sure.
It's the saddest night I've had as a coach. And we won a buzzer beater by 2 points, so we rallied. It should have been great.
Sure.
We had exuberant players and fans storm the court. Kid from the other team got run over, almost like people storming the stage. And I said it was just like a wave. And this kid got run over in the wave. And we saw a kid from the other team laying on the court and holding his head and not moving. And myself and one of my assistants sprinted onto the court, and I got down and covered the kid's head. And I said, I got you. You're okay now. You're okay now. My assistant coach was keeping everyone away. And then after a couple seconds later, maybe 5 seconds later, one of their good players comes over, Nick. His name starts with a T.
Trevor. I can never say his last name.
Him.
Yes.
He came over, tapped me on the shoulder, said, "Coach, we got him," and we helped him up, walked him off, and then I don't know, adults behaving badly, and you would have thought that I was the villain, and people from the crowd in my face, profanity laced, and it was just I was extremely disappointed. Because obviously, I didn't want the kid to get hurt. I didn't have any control over the basket went in. There's nothing I could do. And I think I did all I could do. And, I getting messages from people I thought were friends. I went to bed last night and I thought friendships were gone. I thought the Hughesville-Montoursville rivalry was gone. And now I got messages from people that I don't know, because on Facebook you can just send messages, and
sure.
And I responded. And in the morning, as they always say, cooler heads prevail. And I got apologies from friends and everything. I've got I think all the apologies that I'd hoped to get, but one so far. But I got off the phone with Hughesville's AD, and he actually thanked me and my assistant coach Mike Heimbaugh for going above. He said for going above and beyond to protect our player, because it wasn't even your player, it was our player. And but I don't know. It's things were said last night that I'm just hurt. And so that's how I am. I am hurt. And
yeah, I could see how that was a long night. And that's you and I, whether it was the show or other aspects in our life, we have had long nights depending on, what's funny, I think you and I, for all the things that you and I disagree on or that we don't have similar, one of the things that you and I are very similar about is that we will stay up if we feel like the world is not right. And I can see how you felt like your world wasn't like it was tilted last night. Your world was a little off balance last night after the game.
Yes. And you really find out, I don't say who your friends are, because it was such a hodgepodge of people. It's not like your best friend, your childhood friend, but I heard from other basketball coaches last night. I heard from friends. I heard with sports people. I heard with like from media people. I heard from referees, and just like they have no idea. There was probably 6 or 8 or 10 different conversations that I'd had.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how helpful they were, because you could just the whole, and this is part of the thin skin of my makeup, and I know I've told you this, like I really like to be liked like a teenage girl. And it bothers me when people don't like me. And it's one of the hardest things about coaching, because you always have kids on the bench who aren't playing as much as they want to, and you're making them mad, and then they're mad at you. And so you always try to handle that the best way. But, for me, like waking up, going to bed last night and being like, I can't believe this person's mad at me, and I can't believe this person's mad at me. And not only do I not think I did anything wrong, I think I helped the situation. And you can see through, there were adults who didn't help the situation. And that's it. So I'm sad.
Well, I'll say this as like a third-party viewer, right? Who really didn't have a rooting interest in the game last night. Montourville's a rival for us. Hughesville's a rival for us.
Right. You hate us both.
The building might have collapsed last night, and I don't know how sad. No, I'm just joking. I will say this. I think a lot of times in sports, things are so circumstantial. And when I look at what happened last night, one of the coolest things about Hughesville's gym is the balcony. I still think it's one of the coolest gymnasiums that we have in our district, I would argue. The benefit of the balcony is they're able to put their students up in the balcony, and it's awesome.
Yes.
We're there on Saturday. We're at Hughesville, and we're excited for the balcony. Like it's fun when you have a student section and a crowd, and just that's the whole point of high school sports. The downside to the balcony is there's nowhere to put the other student section. I would assume that most of the time they try to keep the other student section out of the balcony as well, because you don't want those two sides clashing up top, which makes complete sense. The downside to that is that the student section typically ends up packed in on the floor,
right
on the other side. The coincidence of this is the game-winning basket ended up occurring 15 feet away from the Montourville student section. I'm not implying it excuses anybody. All I'm simply implying is that circumstantially, it just fell perfectly for this thing to happen. And it's unfortunate it happened. As it was happening, at one point, I had a split second where I was like seriously worried about the Heine kid. And he had played the game of his life.
He was the best player.
He was fantastic.
He was the best player last night.
And there was a split moment where I seriously thought to myself, if something doesn't happen, like that kid's in trouble. I don't know what's about to happen to that kid if something. And fortunately, something did happen. And again, there's so many circumstances. I think refereeing's hard. I think it's one of the hardest things to do.
It is.
I've said to lots of coaches and to other people, you could not pay me to referee. You couldn't. I will not do it. I have no interest in that aspect of life and what you take on, the responsibility and the yelling and trying to get stuff right. And I just don't want that responsibility as a referee. Unfortunately, there was things that happened throughout the game. It wasn't a great called game. It just wasn't. For both ways, it wasn't great. There were calls near the end that certainly made tensions higher instead of right. They certainly didn't make the fuse smaller. Let's put it that way. Beforehand, and then when you package all of it up, it ended up being this thing that I don't think anybody was ready for. And when I say everybody, I mean the people in that gym, the security. I don't think anybody was prepared for what was about to actually take place at the end of that game. And I just think when you add all those things in, a lot of it could be explained as just circumstantial. It was a wave of events that led to this thing. I feel very fortunate having watched it. I felt very fortunate that nobody got seriously hurt.
Well, and one of the coincidental things, and we hadn't talked about it till just now, when we were getting off the bus, we talked about their balcony, and we talked about it in pregame. And we said, listen, Chris Massey always said, the beat writer for the Sun-Gazette always says that Hughesville has the best student section. Mm-hmm. The balcony, what do they call it? It's something about the balcony.
I've always heard it referred to as the big bad balcony, but okay. I don't think that's what they refer
Whatever
to as.
But I said, listen, they're going to be loud. They're going to be in it. You're going to hear things about your mom. You're going to hear things about your girlfriend. Like, that's what. But I said, like, this is what they're supposed to do. They're supporting their classmates. They're supporting their school. This is what makes it fun. So it's like, don't fight with the balcony. Just enjoy the moment, because this is what high school sports is all about. And it's so much better playing in a fun environment where it's going to be loud and their fans are here than playing in some half-empty gym against a team that doesn't care. So that's what we talked about too. We're like, just embrace the environment. So, their student section was in it. Our student section, we traveled well. And it's just, as someone said last night, we have to keep in mind in this, there's kids and adults, and everyone's responsible for their actions. And we have kids who put a kid in harm's way because out of euphoria, they lost their common sense and didn't act accordingly. But there's also adults who didn't act accordingly too. And in the grand scheme of things, especially oftentimes in education, we hold kids more responsible than we hold adults, and we'll punish kids and we'll talk to the adults. And that's what I'm just curious to see. Listen, and I've been through a marriage. Like, there's lots of times in life that tensions get high for whatever reason, and you say things that in the moment they make you feel really good. And then once everything calms down, you're like, I probably should have picked different words. I wish I hadn't said that. And I get it. And I would love to have a sit-down conversation with all the powers that be over a burger and a, Michigan State, Indiana basketball game and talk it through. And I think we all walk away friends again. But I don't know if that's going to happen. So we'll see.
It'll be interesting. Like I said, watching it as a third-party viewer, you could feel the emotions revving up. Both teams were playing so hard. Even watching the game, I just remembered thinking, you could see some kids were making mistakes, not because necessarily they wanted to do the right thing so badly, and they were trying so hard to do them, that some guys were making mistakes that you wouldn't typically see out of them. But that's how competitive and intense the game was. You could feel it through the screen. I mean, I was watching the live stream, and I could feel how intense it was. And I remember turning it on, and you were sitting and Tag was sitting, so I knew that there had to have been some technicals early on and that the refs were struggling to maintain the game. I just think when you look at the grand circumstances of it all, I think my response looking at it was just a series of events that just led to this thing. And I don't know if you can pinpoint one person, if you can pinpoint one thing. I'm so happy that the Heine kid is okay. That's the number one thing I'm taking away from it. Because I had a split second. I had a moment where I was like, I don't know if that's going to end well. Like, that was really scary for, it was really, really scary for a second. All right. Anything else?
So anyway, and just for the record, the technical foul that I got was yelled by a wrestler in the crowd.
Sure.
It absolutely was.
Sure it was.
I just want,
all said.
This is the maturity level of me. I hope that if this happens to you, you can handle it the same way. So I won't mention his name, but he's a 160-pounder. And he yelled, and I was chirping at one of the officials. And then I was done, and I'd walked away. And the kid yelled something. The official turned around and teed me up. And at halftime, we joked about it because that was our first technical foul of the year. We don't have a player, a coach, JV varsity. We didn't have one. Now we have one, and it's a wrestler that he leads our team in technical fouls. And so we joked about it. And when I came back out after halftime, and our student section's right behind the bench, he apologized. And I said, I think we have to invite you to our banquet because you're leading in a category. Like you are a team leader in technical fouls. And I wonder how many other coaches could, if a fan got him a technical foul, could like joke with the kid, because the kid didn't do it on purpose. He didn't swear. He didn't say anything that bad.
Yeah.
So, the whole thing is unfortunate, and I'm much melancholy is the word that I used. I should not, after last night's win, I should not be feeling melancholy, and that's all I can feel. I just can't get out of it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting because we're going to talk a little bit about education, because we have some numbers from the Bureau of Labor about educators that are staggering that just came out about 2021. One of the things that I've noticed, especially with crowds, like going to some of these middle school games and going just across the district. I was even at a game down at the PPL Center in Allentown. I got to see two of the best teams in the country play. And even in that environment, there is this, people are just so, there's almost this pent up energy, and you can kind of feel it. Like, it's been so long since people have been able to like go and watch games and kind of have the blood flowing. Do you know where I'm going with that? And it almost, there are moments, and games that I've coached in, games that I've watched, games that I have nothing to do with, and I'm just watching the live stream. You can almost feel that pent up energy, whether it's a student body or it's fans or it's parents or whatever it is. It just feels like everybody's on edge because we just haven't gotten to do this in 18, 24 months. And it still feels like as a group, as a whole, we're still trying to remember how this felt, how to handle things, how to react to things, how to, it's funny, like some of the things that happened last night, people were saying, well, why didn't so-and-so do this? Or why didn't so-and-so do that? And all I kept thinking to myself was like, I wonder if how many people froze? How many people forgot how to react? How many people, because you can feel it. I'm telling you, every time I walk into a gym with like a student body or a crowd or parents or everything, there's just a little more oomph to it than there was 2 years ago. And I really think that some of that is just like, it's been so long since we've had to do some of this stuff. I really do.
I mean, one of the things too, and I agree with everything you just said. One of the things too that I've never understood from sports fans, even when you're dealing with kids, adults who are watching youth games, there's this aspect of, as I root for my team, I have to hate the other team. And there is this anxiety, and I see it at little kid sports, I see it at high school sports, like the kids wearing a different color uniform are bad kids. They're evil kids. Like, our kids are saints and their kids are awful. And there's this hostility towards the opponents. Like when we're watching on TV and you watch Carolina versus Duke and you hate Duke, what's it matter? Because they're characters on a TV show. Sure. But, these are real people. And one of after the JV game, and we lost the JV game, and it was relatively close. Like, I was 6 or 8 or 10 points. It wasn't, but, they go shoot the handshake line. And after it's over, my son is standing there talking to one of the kids from the other team. And I think people thought there was tension. And I was like, no, they played travel ball last summer. That kid was one of our best players. And they know each other. So much like before the game, Hughesville has a super baseball player. And I think I don't know how officially, he's going to Michigan is what I said. I don't know if you can legally I don't know. But that's where he has declared that he wants to go. And I've never talked to the kid before. But obviously baseball's in my blood and it's big in our family. So they're going through the layup line before the game. And I walk out in the court and I said, hey, I hear you're going to Michigan. Like, where else were you looking at? Right. And he starts rattling off these other schools. I said, why did you pick Michigan? He's like, you need to go through. So I probably had a 90-second conversation with him. But they're kids, but 99% of these kids are good kids. Sure. Every now and then you run into an idiot on another team, but I mostly like talking to the kids on the other team. I'll be the coach in the middle of the game that's like, hey, that's a nice pass, 21. And, I don't know. I think there's I don't understand why adults look at the kid guarding our kid or blocking our kid's shot and think that kid is evil.
I think there's a little bit of that. The thing I took the most from last night is that thank God that kid was all right. But B, I started thinking to myself, there's a lot of parts of society where we think we'll just jump back into this and it'll be like we never missed a beat, like it's riding a bike. And I think now, like when you look at some of this stuff, whether it's middle school events or high school stuff and things like that, like, no, like there was a reason, like society builds and you learn how to handle yourself and you learn how to do these things and how you should act, whether you're an adult or part of the student cheer section, right? Like there's a way that we try to do these things and there's a protocol and stuff. And I think sometimes we just think as whether you're an administrator or a parent or a coach or whatever it may be, I think there was this idea of like, we'll just start doing this stuff again. And everyone will remember how to handle themselves and everyone will remember how to do this. And like some of this stuff that I've learned this year is like, it's not always that simple. Like you have like the student section is a pretty good example. You have student sections that literally you have kids that for 2.5 years were never in a student section, like never cheered in their high school student section because there was no basketball game to go and you weren't allowed to go into the gym and have these huge sections and cheer. Like it wasn't a thing. And even for parents, like they haven't felt that blood boil up because they feel like whether they feel like their kid was cheated or their kid's having a bad night or they're worried about the health of their kid. It's been a while since that blood, that feeling, right? That rush, that energy that you get. I think as a society, we might have underestimated our ability to just jump back into that. Like it's not simple.
I'm with you. And incidentally, the kid's name Josh. His last name I'm losing. The Haney. Who was the kid? Or I know you're reading now and you're not listening.
I don't know his first name.
It's Josh.
Yes. I believe it's Haney.
Well, anyway, I had a nice conversation with his dad in the hallway, understanding why they were upset and they were concerned for the health of their kid, but they were very civil to me.
Yeah.
And so like not. There were a lot. Kenny Tallman, who was the AD. Thank God Kenny Tallman was the AD because I know him and I played high school football with him and he was a very calming force through it. So there were lots of people who really helped the situation. But I will say this: of all the things, I was really just sad and discouraged and all those things from last night. The one thing that I read that actually pissed me off was someone made a comment of when I ran out on the court to try to help the kid. That someone made a comment, they were surprised how agile I still was. And I thought it was a dig at my age.
It was a dig at your age.
And that really, that fired me up.
They don't know, you do the bike or you do the treadmill? They don't know that you...
I bike. I don't do the treadmill.
Okay, they don't know though that you're on the bike.
I am on the bike. I was quick. Once upon a time, I was fast.
I will say this, and I think you'll allow me to say this. You walk with a gait. Like you don't, I
walk on my toes.
Yes, you don't have like a smooth delivery when you're walking.
No, I walk
so
on
I
my
think
toes.
you throw people off with kind of like the little gait that you take, and then all of a sudden it's like spring into action. So I'm sure they were taken back by that.
What? And it's funny too with kids, and when you have kids, and they're like, oh, they look like you. They have your nose, they have your eyes, they have your. With my oldest daughter, you don't know how many people have said to me, oh, she walks like you. Because she kind of walks on her toes as well. So it is,
That's interesting.
Yeah. All right.
A couple of stats here about educators that I want to dive into, because I think there's some sub pockets of the economy and of the workforce that we're going to see numbers like this. But to me, these are staggering. The Bureau of Labor Statistics came out right now, as of today, at the beginning of 2022, there are 567,000 fewer educators in America's public schools than there were before the pandemic. 43% of the jobs.
Hold on. Say that number again.
Yes, 567,000.
So 500,000
fewer educators in America's public schools
in the last 2 years. 500,000 people
than before the pandemic.
That's staggering.
43% of the jobs that are posted are going unfulfilled for the public school system.
See, now that's a crazy stat. And I know you were in education. I was in education for a little bit. Years ago, maybe not in cities and urban areas, but in places like this, if you had an elementary teacher opening, they would have 100 applications.
Okay.
Now it's not 100. It would be fascinating to see what they have.
Yeah, I mean, when I first graduated from college, there was this idea that you had to go seek positions. Like this idea that you were going to go to your hometown and just like teach, that was not a realistic for everybody. It just wasn't a thing anymore. So that number's staggering. Some of the other statistics that came out of this, most of these were done either by the Bureau of Labor Statistics or they were done by the National Education Association. over 80% of teachers right now believe that the jobs that are open will not be fulfilled. Over 55% believe that they will leave teaching sooner than they expected.
It's, I mean, I knew it was bad. You talked about it before.
Yes.
And I don't know where you got your stats before or if you were just talking to people in education, but I had known it was bad because you had kind of tipped me to it. I didn't know it was this bad. Like, this is dangerous.
I to use the word scary. I hate using that because it's almost like a fear mongering.
Right.
But the crazy, scary, pick the word you want to use. I think it's not over yet. When I talk to friends that are teachers and family members and different people in my life that are teachers and have been teachers, there is this overwhelming need. Like, they talk about it with a lot of vulgarity of like, I can't do this anymore. And so I originally, when I started trying to find these numbers and look into some of this stuff, I was looking for kind of like the beginning. And I was shocked when I saw what has already happened, because I thought we were going to start getting into the numbers that you're seeing right now. I thought we would see those numbers a year from now, 2 years from now, as the fallout of the pandemic. And what these numbers show me, like, if this is the beginning, I can't even begin to fathom what that means for the public school system. So I'm hoping it's more towards the peak of it, but the numbers are way ahead of schedule than what I thought they were going to be. Way ahead.
And I will say this, as much as through the pandemic, being a teacher would have sucked because of your virtual, your non-virtual, your when they blended them, when they were half virtual and there's a word for it, but hybrid is the word. But you know, what would have been worse would have been being an administrator. And so there's nowhere to hide in these. And the teachers I'm sure that in the last couple of years, teachers are complaining about administrative support, but the administration is too much, is so busy dealing with the public outcries and the fight about this and the fight about that, that, there's no wonder.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on the numbers. But again, if you know somebody that's a teacher in your life, check on them, make sure they're okay, because the numbers right now of people dropping out of education is staggering across the country. I
wonder the same thing with principals.
I'm curious if I wonder if the pay alone makes the numbers for principals less than teachers.
And probably principals had to have been in longer and they're closer to retirement.
Yes.
So yes. Okay, then let me ask you. I wonder how many principals are miserable since March of.
More miserable than they were before?
Yes.
I think you could
all
do that
of them?
for any. Yeah, I think you could do that for almost any. There's a lot of positions or jobs that you could say that about right now.
I don't know. I think a lot of people that got to work from home like it better.
Oh, that's true.
I think there are changes like that.
I think you're 100% right. I hadn't thought of it in that manner about the people whose lifestyle got to shift because of the pandemic. That's very true. It'll be interesting. I think part of it with teaching is the pay. I think that, so I do wonder if there's a discrepancy between the principal numbers and the teacher's numbers just based off of finances alone. Just the financial difference closes that gap.
And then imagine like being a school board person who doesn't even get
paid at all. Well, we've already talked about, you and I think that's an impossible position.
Yes.
Right now. Another interesting story that we came across,
this is actually a light, and I love this story.
A 19-year-old student and aviation enthusiast says he rejected a $5,000 offer from Elon Musk to shut down Elon Jet. It's a Twitter account, but he uses a bot. And essentially what it does is every time his jet is taking off or landing, the bot essentially notifies you of where Elon Musk is coming and going.
How does that work?
Well, so I don't know how the exact thing works. I know that you can do a bot that's very simple. It's very similar to a macro when you use an Excel sheet, right?
Okay.
And if you tell it when it does this, do that, they can link it to an aviation site. all of these aviation sites, if you know the plane or the jet you're looking for, because they all have these codes, these numbers.
So the VIN number, if you will.
So once the number is out, like once you know which one it is, I mean, you can get on and look up that plane and see where it's going to come.
Okay.
So essentially what he's done is he's used a macro, he's used an and if Twitter bot to tell you whenever this plane is leaving and landing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard.
For someone who knows what they're doing, this is like basic 101 computation. Let's put it that way.
So Elon Musk, who's worth a gajillion dollars, offers the kid $5,000.
$5,000. And I find this hysterical. Good for the kid, turned him down. So the kid said, nope, I'm going to keep doing it. What is the number? Let's say you're 19 and you're that kid. What is the number?
Well, and here's the thing.
To me, you're getting 6 digits. Anything below,
I was going to say 7.
Anything below
what
6
is Elon Musk worth? Do we have a guess?
Billions. I mean, I can look it up. I bet you it's over 200. Let me look real quick because we talked about.
Okay, so while you're looking, I'm just going to say, what is $1 million to Elon Musk?
222 billion.
222 billion.
So you're saying I'm lowballing. I should go for 7 digits.
The kid's like, listen, $1 million, I'll let it go.
Interesting.
Because in Elon, it would purely be personal.
Mm-hmm.
It would not have anything to do with business. $1 million for Elon Musk to give away will never change his lifestyle, his wife's lifestyle, his kids' lifestyle, his he will never notice it's gone.
So here's the only issue with that. The only issue with that is it's very easy for somebody else to, like, if it was this simple for this kid, it could be simple for another kid. At $5,000, maybe another kid doesn't try to do it. If you give this kid 7 digits, I mean, every kid with the computer is probably going to start trying to track Elon Musk and where he's going.
All right, sorry, kid. I thought I was helping you get 7 figures. Now you're not.
Jeff
has found the fly in the ointment. No, you're absolutely.
That's my
right.
only loophole.
You're absolutely right.
That's pretty interesting.
I'm sorry. I thought the kid had it.
I thought he did too.
I thought the kid had figured out the loophole, and then you just quashed it.
I didn't need to. Last thing for today, before we go over some of the stuff NCPA Media has coming up, Tom Brady has officially announced his retirement. This is legitimate this time. I know the last 48 hours it's been a little wonky. I don't really feel bad not talking a ton about this because I feel like we've already decided he's the greatest quarterback.
Yes.
I feel like we've beaten this horse for 5-6 years now of kind of how great he is, and no one disputes it. Right. And he's earned it. I'm not complaining that we talk about how great Tom Brady is. But in a weird way, this retirement's going to be quieter than it should because I feel like we've had this discussion for the last 5 years.
The thing that I find fascinating about Brady is, for as good as he was, I'm trying to think of a guy who in another sport that's comparable. That's like, yes, he's really, really good, but I hate him.
Okay.
Maybe A-Rod, maybe Barry Bonds, some people like that. But there was that. Unless you were a Patriots fan, or unless you were just like a football purist who was ready to make the argument, because there were a billion people who said Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback ever, and I hate him. But then he went to Tampa.
Okay.
And he starts doing Subway commercials, and he starts doing this. Like the one, I still love the one where he's like, but I'm Tom Brady. And they cut him off, and it goes back to Barkley. Like, he has become, like, universally likable.
Sure.
And when he won in Tampa with Gronk again, because Gronk is everybody's frat buddy.
Right.
That's like, when he's doing the USA commercials, and he goes, but I'm special. Like, that cracks me up every time. Well, so Brady finally became beloved.
There's a little, we talked a lot about The Last Dance with Michael Jordan, and I always thought Michael Jordan was more lovable than he should have been at the end of it because everybody hated Jerry Krause. People were so mad at Jerry Krause for breaking up that team. He was the president, I believe, or not the president. The
general manager.
He was the general manager of the Chicago Bulls. But people were so mad at him for trying to break up that team and not being willing to re-sign Phil Jackson, all these things. Right. He was such a villain at that point that even people who kind of probably should have disliked Jordan, he became likable because, like, Krause was so unlikable. See, I think that's happened for Brady and Belichick. I think Belichick has become unlikable in a way that it has made it easier to really enjoy Brady the last couple of years.
You know, and it's a valid take, because Belichick is just so like short and curmudgeon-y, and he doesn't come across as charismatic or funny or any of those things. And so yeah, maybe they were just an unlikable couple.
Right.
And now that when Brady got away from him, I will disagree with your Jordan statement. I think everybody loved him. I think it was 97%.
You think so?
Yes.
But I think at that, maybe because it was after the retirement and you come back. There was a moment in time, though, like with the Jordan rules and some of the stuff that was going on, he wasn't like loved. Not by people outside of Chicago.
Oh,
Really?
And maybe I'm wrong. I know someone had referred to Jordan as the Teflon superstar, that there were these things. Like, he wasn't really a nice guy to all of his teammates.
Right.
And
see, I thought
but everyone still loved him. Nothing hurt. Nothing
I thought with the Jordan rule stuff, and then even leading into like there were a lot at the time. There were a lot of black politicians that looked for his favor, and he wouldn't give it to them.
Yeah.
And so I do think there were pockets throughout the country, segments of affiliations throughout the country that they didn't hate Jordan, but there was not this like overwhelming love for him, and like he was this perfect figure. But by the time he had retired, I think Krause was just such an unlikable person that it just made Jordan almost. And I feel the same way about Brady.
Well,
I think Belichick just made it so it almost became a vanilla chocolate thing, and like you had to pick one, and you're clearly not going to pick Krause, and you clearly weren't going to pick Belichick, and so like you almost had to pick Brady, and it made him more likable.
The funny thing is, I still like Belichick, I never liked the Patriots. I'm a Cowboys fan, but I liked them both. But yeah, there's kind of a lot to digest there. I think one of the things, let me say this, and I heard this with humor first, and then I think it works with sports careers too. A joke's funny, and then you beat it to death, and it's not funny anymore.
Sure.
But once you've beaten it to death long enough, then it becomes its own joke again, and then it becomes funny again. And I think with a lot of these athletes, they start out and they're young and they win, like we're with Mahomes right now.
Sure.
Mahomes' Q rating, if you will, is dropping.
Mm-hmm.
Not because of anything he did, but because people are just sick of watching Mahomes win.
Mm-hmm.
But if Mahomes is 36 years old and he gets that run again, there was a lot of Tiger Woods support when he was at the top of his game, but there were a lot of people who didn't like Tiger Woods when he was at the top of his game. But when he won the Masters a couple years ago, and it was because we get one more shot at this. And when you see these guys on their way out, it's easy to root for them again. I think lots of careers take that up. Now we don't like you anymore, but now we're going to enjoy it while you're still here. And I think that happened to Brady.
Okay. Good point. Real quick before there are some comments, if you don't mind, we'll take just a few comments before we end the show. Before we get to the comment, before we get to the comments, just some stuff that we have coming at NorthcentralPa.com. NCPA Media, you can find all of our videos either on YouTube or at NorthcentralPa.com's website or Facebook page. We have a lot of interesting stuff coming up for Black History Month this February. We're going to talk with Albert Jones, who has a new position with our state schools, Lock Haven, Bloomsburg, and Mansfield University. We're going to talk to Waynesport High School head coach, varsity basketball, Alan Taylor, as well. We have a Jetta Nicoline. We're doing a doc feature. She is a photographer who does a lot of portraits and gives out free portraits for people of color. And then we're going to talk with Joe Morales and Mayor Kindy. They have a conversation about Lewisburg and Milton and how they're looking towards the future. So a lot of neat stuff coming out for February, a lot of interesting things coming out for Black History Month here at NorthcentralPa.com. Be sure to keep an eye out for that with NCPA.
And Milton's an interesting place right now.
Yeah.
Not Black history witstanding. It's just as the community. There's a lot of interesting things going on in Milton.
Yeah, no, totally agree. We don't have to dive into some of these, but I do want to talk, like, we'll try to do, how we usually do, like, the 10, 20 second, try to do, like, the speed round. Gary brought up the bus. Do you remember this? His team, this was Michael Jordan when he kept pulling up to the minor league teams with the buses. Remember he got them like this brand new bus?
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember that. I didn't know if you had forgotten that or not.
I will say this before we go. I know, and I'm sure it was like this when Jordan went to the minors. I know in baseball is the one sport where professional or big leaguers will get sent to the minors for like rehab assignments. Sure. And they always talk about how the minor leaguers eat so much better.
Oh, sure.
Because they'll walk in and the pros will be like, wait, we're having hot dogs and what for lunch? And they'll order like, hey, KFC for everybody, get what you want.
Right.
Because these minor leaguers are broke, but the big leaguers who have like these 7, so they always talk about that for the 7 days when this guy's on a rehab assignment, we love him, and on the 8th day we cry when he's gone.
Right.
So anyway,
Tastes Like Good on YouTube. I forget who said it, but someone said that if you take Brady's time in the NFL and cut it in half, Tom Brady has easily 2 Hall of Fame careers.
No doubt.
One. I think that was on the Bill Simmons podcast.
No doubt.
They were trying to decide which athletes. They could only come up with like 2 or 3 athletes that you could do that for. And Brady was one of them.
No doubt about it.
For sure. Real quick, I'm trying to go through these as quickly as possible. Real quick, if it got out that the kids took payment to shut it down, imagine the amount of new bots that would be. That's what we had talked about before. Yeah. I do think this one's worth bringing up.
You feel like since he was first, he should get some reward.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. It just can't be so big that now everyone wants to do it.
No, I'm with you.
Because then if your Musk gets redundant. Cindy brought up a good point, and we'll bring, because again, we try not to talk about refereeing. Explain the technical foul in high school that was completely fake by the Montoursville kid right in front of the ref, who obviously was not paying attention. I had said to you, I thought it was a horrible foul because if you, in most college games or really high-level high school games, that's incidental contact. And what the referee would have done is he would have stood them both up. He would have said no more. He would have told the Hughesville kid to go take your spot.
Thing. He would have said,
more.
Yeah.
He would have told the Hughesville kid, go claim your spot.
Because they had the ball.
And then after the Hughesville claimed it, he would have said to the Montoursville kid, go claim your spot. And then they would have played basketball, and that would have been it.
The rule is, to answer her Cindy's question, when before the ball is handed from the referee to the inbounder kid, if there is a foul committed on the floor, it has to be either a flagrant foul or an intentional foul or something. It's 2 shots on the ball.
Correct. Or it can be incidental.
Or if they call a foul, they have to determine it's no foul. But if they call a foul before they hand, now if he hands the ball to the kid and the kid slots the ball and people start scrambling around, it can be a normal foul.
The problem here is that he called a foul. And if he would have just went with incidental contact before the ball was in play, it's a very different world we're living in right now if the referee does that. Where the basketball rule, which I did not know until last night, it is different if the referee's still holding the ball or if the referee's handed the ball to the inbounder and he hadn't handed him the ball. So when he calls the foul, it should have been incidental contact.
Oh, listen,
regardless.
I'm not going to give any comments on the call one way or the other.
Good idea.
The rule,
I'm the only idiot who will do that. Joe said some of those losses have been offset by cyber school teachers, which is
that's a valid point.
Very valid point. Had a thought of that, Joe. One more thing. I always share it when someone says I'm right. Joe says, I agree with Jeff. Crowds are into it a little more in District 4 this year. The high quality of some of the girls' programs add to the level of interest. There is a great game somewhere almost every night. There was a handful of games last night in our district, and then might have been Friday night of last week. There was a night where there was like 6 games I would have been interested in going to. Some of the quality of matchups right now on our girls and boys in District 4 is incredible.
Well,
really good.
He brings a good point. Like on the girls' side, I'm going to say there's so many really, really good teams.
Yeah.
On the boys' side, I don't know, especially like in our size, I don't know how many teams are really good, but everybody in the league, when you show up, anybody can win.
Competitive every night.
And they say that like any team can beat any team on any given night, and they're lying.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of area teams that are incredibly competitive.
In the Hack 1 boys right now, it is a slugfest.
Yes.
So
Joe's right. There are a lot. You don't go to a lot of blowouts, depending on what division.
Do you remember the name of the baseball player? Corey says he's a very good kid and the pitcher coached him for 2 seasons, Cowbell. Is that the Carter Calburn kid?
Calburn.
He's the really good pitcher.
Yes.
Then? Okay. I've never seen him play
He seemed like I never talked to him before. I talked to him for 90 seconds because I'm always curious with any athlete or even with any student.
Yes.
Like I have kids on my team that, hey, where are you going to college next year? Where else did you look? But when you're being recruited all over, like if you're a local kid and you're like, I looked at Bloom, I looked at Chip, but if you're a Division I athlete, you know, he's talking. I was talked to by Virginia Tech. I was talked to by Pitt. So that it's always curious to me.
There's so many. I do want to say this. There's so many times where, when you try to make a hustle play, people only recognize it when it's a successful hustle play, right? Mm-hmm. Very rarely does the kid who dives on the floor but doesn't win the loose ball get like what a play. Yes. He, on that last play, his effort to come up with what would have been the last rebound of the game, his effort. I mean, he went through and over 2 or 3 people to try to win this ball, and he loses his balance. And as he's going to the floor, you can see he is doing everything in his power to hold on to this ball. And as it goes loose, even as he's hitting, he is still like trying to reach. His effort to try to win that ball is everything high school athletics is about. I was so impressed because most of the time when you start to lose your balance, you lose thought of it. And his only focus the entire time he was falling was, how do I get this ball back? And you could see it. So just a shout out to him for that effort off of that rebound. Because a lot of times you don't get shouted out when you don't win the ball.
Well, and when you're a high school kid like that who's going to Michigan, when you're a big fish in a small pond, it's very easy to be, an arrogant, unlikable, and all I've ever heard about the kid is he's just a nice kid.
Yeah. So no, he made a heck of an effort on that one. Okay, that's what we're gonna end with. There we go.
You've edited out all the other ones?
I don't know if I've edited them out. Listen, there's some good ones here. I have no issue with it. Deanna said, "What about the play on Calburn," which we already talked about. And again, I think if it was, if we want to talk about refereeing and want to break stuff down, I would have went with incidental contact. I think the game was spoiled by that call. That's just 100% an opinion. I'm one person. As a third-party viewer, I thought that call ruins what otherwise was an extremely intense and physically fought contest.
And this is the thing I say, like with the officials, with the shortage, and when you get things like that after last night, like people, you understand why there's a shortage. People are blaming the officials for the melee on the court afterwards. When the game's over, the officials are told to get off the floor. Sure. Security's supposed to take care of it. So now we're blaming officials for things that aren't even their responsibility. Sure. I'm just happy when 5 guys show up and try, because you need 5 for a JV and a varsity game. You need 5 guys, and basketball. I've officiated much more baseball than anything else. I guess it would be called umpiring.
Sure.
And umpiring baseball is not as easy as it looks, but it is way easier than basketball. I've never done football. I can imagine it's harder, but not that. Basketball at times is borderline impossible.
Sure.
And I'm glad they show up and try. I really do, because it's almost like school board member, except basketball officials get paid.
Sure.
For their $75 of verbal abuse every night or whatever they get. I don't even know what they get. But we need them, and it's an impossible job.
It's really hard. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show today. Thank you to Weiss Markets for being our sponsor. And be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news and to check out what NCPA Media has coming this month for video for the month of February.
There you go.
All right.
There you go. I'm Jeff Everett.
He's Mark Messina, and we will see you guys tomorrow.